Hello, it's Deacon Andrew again. And now you're looking at a different part of the church. You're looking at the ceiling of the church right over the sanctuary. Because my phone, which is recording this, is on the book of Gospels. So take a ride with me. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. You've seen this every week. The procession of the Gospels. This is the book of Gospels. And as such, it doesn't have all of the other books of the Bible in it. It just has the gospel passages. And for instance, this is what we just read, the 26th Sunday in Ordinary Time in Year B. So again, delighted to be with you. And our lesson this week is called the book of the Gospels, the Good News, the four evangelists, all different names for the same thing. So the good news in the gospel, it means the same thing. The four evangelists are those that brought the good news. They wrote the gospels. They were helpers. They were associates, close helpers, assistants to the apostles. And they captured information and were those that actually wrote them down, to become the Gospels. The four Gospels, of course, are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And we read the Gospel every single Mass, so whether it's a daily Mass or whether it's a Sunday Mass, we always have the Gospel during our Masses. The first three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, these read more like a story from the beginning of Jesus' life to the end, a little bit more like a biography, but we have to understand that it's not really like a biography, but it kind of reads like it because we're looking at Jesus' life from the first part of that gospel, through to the end. The Gospels were written between 25 years and maybe 70 years after Jesus' death. And it's important to know that that period of time was out there. The Gospel of Mark, we think, was the first gospel written. Why do we think that? Because parts of the Gospel of Mark wind up in Matthew and Luke. So that's part of why scholars tell us it came first. It's also written in very short, terse language, almost as if Mark was on the run. On the other end of the perspective is John, that was written, closer maybe to the year 100. We'll cover a little bit more of that later. The most important thing to know about gospel is that the Gospels contain the words and deeds of Jesus as he did them, as he spoke them. The Gospels are the heart of the Bible. We hear some of this, as I said, at every single Mass. And remember, we stand up as a community when we hear the Gospel. It is that important, compared to the other books of the Bible. Pope Pius X actually had a great suggestion for all of us, in that it is that every day we should take in a little bit of gospel, a little bit of the words and deeds of our Savior, Jesus Christ. And remember, the evangelists, the helpers, wrote them down, but they were given that truth. It was the Holy Spirit who contained that truth, who put it on the hearts of the gospel writers so that we could come to know Jesus, his words and deeds, and come to faith. So the first words of the Gospel of Luke contain something very important. It says that many have tried to write this down, but I, Luke, am writing them down accurately and in sequence so that you may realize the certainty of these teachings that you are receiving. We can believe the Gospels, all true, every word. Now, they do have different perspectives. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are looking at Jesus' life in a little bit different way, but they are all focused on Jesus' life. They were written at different times. They were written in different languages for different audiences. But it's important to know that they were all written to take down the words and deeds of Jesus so that we may come to know him and follow him. Some of the subtle differences. Mark was written first. We think he was on the run. The church was being persecuted by the Romans, by the Jews. He speaks a lot about how to be a good disciple. We believe the Gospel of Mark was written to the people of Rome, and it gives us a wonderful glimpse of Jesus' humanity. Now, the Gospel of Matthew, written to the Jewish people. The Jews gave Matthew a very hard time because he was a collector. The Jews gave Jesus a very hard time because he was challenging them on their faith. He was trying to open their hearts and minds to what God wanted them to know. So Matthew often puts a great deal of conflict between Jesus and the Jewish people. Matthew also does a wonderful thing in that he pulls the traditions of the Old Testament into the New so that we can fully understand how the New Testament fulfills and Jesus' life is coming to dwell among us, how he fulfills the promises embedded in the Old Testament. Luke, I've got to admit, Luke is my favorite. Luke was written much later after Matthew and Mark. His writing is very formal. It's very elegant. But part of what gets me is the Gospel of Luke is so very compassionate. We show the tender mercy of Jesus. We see Jesus being very kind to children. We see Jesus being very kind to women. We see Jesus in prayer. That's very important. Luke does a good job capturing Jesus praying. And Luke, of course, goes further into the post-resurrection, glimpses of Jesus. And of course, the writer of Luke is also the writer of the Acts of the Apostles. So the Acts of the Apostles basically picks up where the Gospel of Luke leaves off. And finally, we have the Gospel of John. It's very different than that of Mark, Matthew, or Luke. It was written last, perhaps maybe about the year 110, and as late as 110. And one of the things important to know about the Gospel of John is that by the time it was written, most of the people that were eyewitnesses to Jesus' life had died. I think it's fair to say in the early Christian life, really included in the mood of the Gospel of Mark, is Jesus was going to come back next Tuesday. His second coming that he promised was right around the corner. But by the time John was written, John is kind of letting us know, folks, we're going to have to be patient. This might take a while, and 1900 years later, we're still waiting, faithfully waiting. Jesus is revealed to us very much as God. In the first verses of the Gospel of John, it tells us that Jesus is God. It takes a while to come to that in the other Gospels. And where Mark really emphasizes the humanity of Jesus, John shares with us the divinity of Jesus. Knowing all four of the Gospels helps us really come to know who God is, who Jesus is, and what it is that it means to follow him and to be one of his own. So, recommendation, every single day, consume a few verses of gospel. And if you do, you will be well-nourished and you will come to know him much better. Look forward to getting with you here to close out the last lesson in October. That's the one coming up next. Thanks, everyone.